Welcome everybody to the Spiritual Direction Certificate presentation. My name is Greg Shapiro. I'm the admissions advisor here at Divine Mercy University, and I've been working within this realm of academia for a little while now, for about 6 years, but within spiritual direction for only a few months now, since early June. And with me today are Maria Brackett, the program director, and Deacon Scott, who is an active student with us. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Maria, and I'll be here as well just to answer any questions related to enrollment.
Thank you so much, Greg, and good morning to everyone on this Saturday. And we're very happy to be here, happy to have Deacon Scott Gilfillan with us this morning, who's a current student in our program. And, it's just a great opportunity on the Saturday morning to talk about our program and kind of what we do and give you all a little glimpse into it through the experience of Deacon Scott as a student. So I just want to welcome you all. And, I'm the program director here at the Spiritual Direction Certificate Program here at Divine Mercy University. And as we go into this interview with Deacon Scott, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the university itself and what the university, kind of the context, so that you understand where the certificate program came from. Greg, I don't know if you can move to the next slide.
Sure.
Thanks. Oh, no, I'm looking for the one on the university. Yes, thank you. So Divine Mercy University, it was founded 22 years ago. It's a graduate school for the mental health sciences, and so it has degrees in psychology, PsyD degree in clinical psychology, and an MS degree in counseling. And the Spiritual Direction Certificate really was started as kind of starting to enter into the world of certificates to try to bring kind of the framework that the university uses to the world of ministry and certificates. Divine Mercy University is a unique university. It was founded by a group of Catholics and Christians in the mental health field that really wanted to integrate faith with the human sciences, and the whole understanding that science and faith can work together. And so they have created, or over these last 20 years, they wrote a book, Students and Faculty Together, which is now out there and you can buy it. It's called The Catholic Christian Meta Model of the Human Person. It really is an articulation or a re-articulation of Catholic Christian anthropology. And it talks about the application of that type of understanding of the human person to the human sciences. And this is really where the Spiritual Direction Certificate Program comes in. It's taking an understanding of the human person within the Catholic Christian tradition of theology and integrating them both together along with the skills needed to be a spiritual director. So it's a rich program because it really stands on those different pillars. And it helps the person to not only learn how to be a spiritual director, but also a deeper understanding of what that human person looks like themselves, and also the person that they're meeting with in spiritual direction, that we call in the program the directee. So I just wanted to give you that context of the university before we enter into our conversation today, just so that you can understand, because I think some of these different aspects are characteristics of our program of the university will probably come out in our conversation with Deacon Scott. So Deacon, it's great to have you here with us this morning. It's really a privilege. Greg and I often talk just about how inspiring it is to have the opportunity to talk to the students of the program. So I wanted you, I do have some questions for you this morning, but just to kind of start us off here, just to let the people know, who you are, where you're from, what you do, and maybe just why you got interested in this program.
Yeah, so I'm a deacon in the Diocese of Charlotte. I've been ordained for about 20 years, so I've been a deacon for a long time. I was born in California and raised in a military family, so I moved all over the country. But we settled in the Charlotte area again about probably 30 years ago. So that's where I call home. Got three grown children, and still married after 39 years. So we're doing good. As a career, I was working for a steel company as a general manager for a long time, and about four years ago, it just felt like I needed to do something different, a second career. And the way God works, he opened up this opportunity at the Catholic Conference Center. It's a conference and retreat center run by the diocese, a fairly good size one. And never saw myself doing that, but so by a few weird coincidences, I ended up being the director of this retreat center about 4 years ago.
Wow.
So the first year was wonderful, and then the pandemic hit. So just as I was learning how to run a retreat center in normal operations, it's like found out, hey, there's a whole new world out there.
Yeah, that's definitely challenging for a retreat center, right? To try to see how to create activities or have activities during the pandemic.
Yeah. And that actually, one of the reasons that led me to this program is, so rather than have an empty retreat center, we really tried to promote private retreats, outdoor retreats, individual small group retreats, just try to get some traffic in there. And saw a lot of people that were really hungering for some spiritual connection, spiritual direction. And as a deacon, I was offering myself, hey, I'll, come here on a private retreat. I'll, spend some time with you. We'll pray. We'll, maybe I'll set you up with adoration. And it turned out that, with all the years as a deacon that I have, that I have a lot of experience in, pastoral care and ministerial counseling and that kind of stuff. But I realized as I was meeting with these folks that they were wanting to go to a place that I didn't really feel qualified to go.
Yeah.
So, so we'd enter this meeting and I'm like, get to so far in the conversation, and I'm like, I don't know. Is it your turn to talk? Is it my turn to talk? Where do we go with this? And to complicate that, we're all wearing masks, so we're looking like this, and I can only see their eyes. So I don't know if they're smiling, they're frowning, what's going on. And that was one of the reasons I said, man, I gotta add a few more tools to my tool bag to help these folks.
Yeah, to be able to sit with someone and to have those conversations. Definitely can understand what that feels like when you feel like, oh, we're starting to get into some waters that I've never navigated before.
Yeah. And really, again, as a deacon, I do some prison ministry, so I know. Okay, when the guy's getting released, do you have a car? Do you have a job? Do you have a place to live? Do you have, those kind of things? You play, a good support network, very practical, application of my ministry. But I realized in spiritual direction, that's not where we go. They're looking for a deeper connection with the Spirit. And so that was a kind of an awakening that really prompted my application to Divine Mercy University.
Yeah, so not so much problem solving, more about having a conversation about, like you said, the Spirit and where he might be calling the person.
Yeah.
So how did you find out about the program, Deacon?
Well, I had, really just Google searches, and I knew about a few programs that I had looked into. Probably about 10 years ago. I think I've had a call to be a spiritual director for a long time, but
Oh, okay.
the time wasn't right. I in fact I applied and was actually ready to enter a different program about 10 years ago, and just everything was telling me, no, that's not the one. This is not the time to do that. So I really kind of put that on the back burner up until this pandemic hit, and I found that I was woefully unqualified to be meeting with these people coming into my retreat center. So that's when I started just Googling and just taking a closer look at the programs that I knew about, and then then looking at others. So I was looking for something a little different than maybe a strictly Ignatian program.
Yes, exactly. Okay.
And certainly looking for something that would fit into my own life and how much time I want to spend away from home and how much time I can devote to this. And Divine Mercy it hit all the notes that I was looking for. Looking at the emphasis on human sciences was a great appeal to me. The online classes and the mix with that and the residencies, that worked well in my schedule. The semester and then a few weeks off and another semester, that worked well as well. So I just when I finally got to looking at it, I couldn't think of a better model for what I was looking for and what would fit well in my life.
That's great, Deacon. Yeah, and then exactly, and that's what a lot of people find out. This mixture that it's mostly a online program, and we have those 2 residencies. Just makes it very accessible. And like you were saying, the actual rhythm of the program that you take a class and then you'll have some time off and then you'll take another course, right? It kind of allows you to do life still, right? And study at the same time. So what has your experience been? Just to, generally, we're going to get into some different aspects of the program later on in some of these questions, but in general, what has your experience been in the program?
I've been exceptionally impressed with the program. And, when I said, hey, decided, hey, I need to really get a certificate in spiritual direction and applied to Divine Mercy, kind of part of me was like, hey, I'm just going to check all the boxes, do what I need to do, and get the certificate, graduate and move on. And I was really surprised how engaging it was, both on the intellectual level and the spiritual level. Especially I didn't have any experience with the online programs to speak of. So I was really amazed at how engaged and attached I became to the material. That was one of the most pleasant surprises. And then the other thing I was looking for was not just kind of intellectual formation on how, what does a spiritual director do and say, but being a deacon removed from my formation experience from 20 years or more, I think I was hungering for a little more spiritual formation on my own.
Yeah.
I did not really expect that I would get much in a Divine Mercy online program, but I've been really amazed at how much it's inviting me to look at my own spirituality and deepen my own spiritual life. So that's been, 2 of the really surprising outcomes of being part of this program.
Wow. So the online learning has been a little bit more engaging than you thought it would be. And it sounds like you actually feel like you're learning, even though it's online.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Really learning and really kind of assimilating the material, into my own life and my own understanding of the world around me, and how I'm working with people. So that's so it's not just learning a calculus. It's really kind of embracing this as part of who I am and how I interrelate with others. The online format also was another surprise, was just really becoming attached to the cohort that I'm a part of. I thought we'd all be like, ships passing in the night, but I really feel like I know these folks, and that I have a new peer group or support group.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, that it is possible to build those relationships through online. And also you've had the experiences through the residencies to actually see the people in person.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And Deacon, you spoke about how it's just been helpful for you to grow in your own relationship with the Lord and your own spiritual life. And which for me it's not surprising, because it's definitely an element we put into the program, kind of that transformational nature that would help you to grow too, because just we feel like if the spiritual director isn't growing in his or her relationship with the Lord, then it would be hard for them to be able to kind of help someone else to do that. But maybe you can speak a little bit more about how it's just helped you to grow.
I mean, just the attentiveness to my own spiritual life. I had been meeting with the spiritual director, and so I'd walk away with a kind of a new insight or two. But now I'm really, when I meet with him, I really try to extract every bit of information, spiritual voice speaking to me in those times. And so those sessions have become a lot more fruitful for me because I have a little better understanding of what they're all about, but also I'm committed to try to be a good spiritual director, good, Lord willing. And so that's part of it, and then just taking, reading some of the material and, the qualities of a spiritual director and that kind of stuff. I'm taking that fairly seriously too. And I think that's having an impact on my own, spiritual growth as well.
That's beautiful to hear, Deacon. It's helping you to become a better person, a better deacon. And it sounds like you're moving into that identity of what it means to be a spiritual director and understanding more what that ministry implies. So that's beautiful. What have you found to be the most helpful about the program?
I think we mentioned a few other things. I think the asynchronous format works well with my schedule. I've been very impressed with the faculty and staff. I think they're very supportive, and they're both seem to be very knowledgeable in what they're presenting, but also have a great level of care and concern for their students. So I find that reassuring. I haven't really tapped into it much, but I just know that from that it's there in case I have a difficulty. So those have been very helpful to me. The residencies were very, very formative, both intellectually and spiritually as well.
So now that we talked, you mentioned the residencies a little bit, let's go a little bit deeper into that. What was your experience of those residencies? You've done two. You've completed the two residencies that the program has to offer now at this stage, because I think you're in the 5th course. So what has that been like for you, those residencies?
Yeah, it was kind of like a spiritual boot camp.
Okay.
I not in a negative way, but it was there were really, I see like two components in the residency. One is is you're together, and there's a lot of role playing. I'm acting. I'm a spiritual director to other individuals, and there's people watching, and I know they're going to critique. And
the faculty, those faculty
that
are there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of that, I'm going to have a little sit down and with one of the faculty advisors and go through what they saw. That kind of scrutiny, I think for most people is a little uncomfortable. So that was part of it. But part of it, again, I thought I was fairly open to critique and really wanted to hear what other people are seeing and me and listen to what they things that I might be able to do a little differently. So I was open to that, and so even though it was the scrutiny part of it was a little difficult for me, the fruit that came from that was really, really good. And I walked away with, so those are some personalities, that are contrary to what a spiritual director is all about, or those are some of the annoying tendencies I thought I put the rest, 20 years ago, and here they are surfacing again. I have a tendency, for instance, to when things get a little tense, to interject humor. Just to kind of let's move on. Let's laugh and move on. We don't want to go there. Well, that's kind of inappropriate for a spiritual direction session to where you want to go deeper, as opposed to gloss it over and let's laugh it off. So that was kind of like one of the things that came out in the residency. The other component of that residency was a retreat, and I thought the two, for instance, the content and the role playing, again, very challenging, but that coupled with this in the middle, this retreat was a beautiful combination for me, because then after a little scrutiny and a little humbling and a little self-examination, I could spend a day in prayer and listen to the Lord speaking to me in adoration and some of the other retreat activities, and it just put all of that in perspective. This is not just, like I said, it's not a boot camp like I'm entering the Marines. I'm really trying to become more and more aligned with our Lord Jesus and the work that I do, and so that retreat just kind of put it all in a beautiful context.
Yeah, I can imagine that, just having that, you're receiving that coaching and that feedback through those different sessions, the role play sessions, and then just having that time to kind of touch down deeper with the Lord, because I'm sure, like kind of what you're mentioning, you're seeing a lot of, you're getting to know yourself a lot better as you're learning how to practice the ministry of spiritual direction. And so I imagine, to have those times of conversations with the Lord, just to maybe connect dots or understand what he's doing there would just be so important.
Yeah.
If I could actually chime in for a second, since we're talking about the residencies. First thing, if you look at the screen, and we have two images, and the top one was our residency back in February, just playing a game of Where's Waldo for a moment. I think I spotted you, Deacon Scott, toward the back, toward the very left.
He is there.
Yeah. But I also wanted to just point out to all of our guests that along with that, if you notice that we have a lot of folks that are in this program that come from different vocations. So we have deacons, we have consecrated religious, we have consecrated lay people, we have secular lay that are in this, but what they all have in common is this love for this ministry and wanting to serve God and serve others. So now and then we have folks that ask, is this a problem if I'm a lay person? Is it a problem if I'm not in any sort of religious community? And the answer to that is no. This isn't really a ministry that's only designed for certain vocations. This is something that God could call anyone to. And we have this program put together for all of those that have been called to this ministry.
Exactly. Thanks, Greg. So, Deacon, what have you found the most difficult about the program, or about your, these studies, or this time in the program? Is there anything that you found like difficult as you've gone through?
Well, I wish I could say there's been a few struggles, but there hasn't been too many. I'm kind of an academic overachiever, so I thrive on that kind of challenge, and I'm pretty aware of time management, and so I was able to kind of fit this into my schedule. The asynchronous format helps a lot. So I can do this when I want to do it in bed at night, early in the morning, sometime at a break during the day. So that works a lot. I'm pretty good at writing. So there's some writing that the program demands. And so, I can knock that out fairly well. So I hate to say this, but one of the things that was most challenging was this APA style notation. So I'm good at writing, so I bang out my paper or my discussion post in 30 minutes or an hour, and then it'd take me another hour or two to get not the references, but just get the format right. But that was, I'm getting better. I guess all in all, it was more and we talked about this, just the personal awareness and growth that I was experiencing was at times like difficult, that, hey, my ego would flare, and I'm like, who are they to say this about me, I had to put a little bit of that to bed. So
yeah, definitely sounds like you're talking about just the need to be able to be coachable when you're going through the program.
Yeah, that's a good way of saying that.
Yeah, to be able to be open to learning. Sometimes we can be open to learning new knowledge, but and sometimes skills too. But it seems like as the students go through the program, the Lord also kind of uses as an opportunity to help them to grow in their own self-knowledge. And so, yeah, definitely, I can see that need to kind of learn from the Lord and from the process itself. Right. Yeah. So thank you.
One thing I'd like to add to what Greg said about the, is it just for religious or a priest or a deacon? And there are some of those part of the program, but a lot of lay people part of the program too. And I find in the discussion posts and even at the residencies, the interaction between all these different people called to serve the Lord in various ways it really adds a lot of depth and texture to the program. So you hear things from different points of view, and that enriches my understanding of whatever the topic might be.
So interesting. Yeah, and there's different ages and all different walks of life. So it is so true. Sometimes things that you wouldn't think about or see or understand, another student has a deep experience. And it's interesting because there's people just like you that have a career in something else. Most everyone has not been dedicated full-time to ministry unless they're a religious sister, consecrated man or woman, or a priest. But a lot of the people are coming in from other careers. So there's just a richness of experience, of life experiences.
Yeah, and that tends to build everybody up and enrich the discussion. I don't detect anyone feeling, hey, I'm not qualified to to be speaking to, like I'm doing practice spiritual direction with a priest, and that makes me a little uncomfortable, but it just worked out wonderfully. So
beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. So what would if you were talking to another deacon that was interested in the program, what would you say to him if he was looking into the program?
That's a good question. I've talked to a few deacons. I've told them, some of my experiences, and they've all mostly been positive. Then I kind of remind them of their formation experience. And formation as to be a permanent deacon, to be ordained is a pretty exciting time. A lot of intellectual development, a lot of spiritual formation. It's a really very active time in a man's life. And then they get ordained and they launch into ministry. And they, I think a lot of them will kind of start neglecting that spiritual formation. They're really so active in this and that, and they got their job, their family, their ministry, their parish, they're just running and doing all kinds of things. So I think one of the big selling points for me is, go back to that very rich, active, lively formation environment, where you really felt close and connected with the Lord, and that's part of what the program is. And then the other part, most deacons have just a heart for service. They're doing all this because they really love serving. They love serving others, serving the church, and this would be a way of serving others, but really serving in their spiritual life. You're there to, as a servant, as a deacon, to kind of see what kind of assistance you can provide in their spiritual life as well. So, like, my years of ministry have been very, very practical: marital counseling, prison ministry, baptismal prep, and that kind of stuff. But this is a different kind of service, and it's almost service to a soul or service to a person's spirit. And that's just as gratifying, or I'm finding that just as gratifying as the other forms of service that I entered into.
That is so interesting, Deacon. Because Greg, and of course, we're not deacons, so we don't understand this world so well. And it's so interesting to hear, how a deacon could feel called to, you are ordained minister, so you would imagine that a deacon would feel called to kind of accompany someone in their relationship with the Lord and helping that to grow. But it's true. Sometimes the deacons in our churches, we see them doing a lot of functional activities or helping out in different ways. But yeah, I think it would be great to be able to talk to one of my deacons about my spiritual life and have that support too.
Yeah, and like many deacons, I had probably a misunderstanding of what spiritual direction was. I didn't take my spiritual direction very seriously, and it wasn't until I really was tested in the pandemic that I realized I really don't know this. I've been talking with people, interviewing people, being a minister to others for a long time, but I really don't know spiritual direction. I can meet with folks and we can talk about things, but I'm learning in a very deeper way. That's not a spiritual direction, or the spiritual direction that people are really hungering for.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. Well, I think I might be at the end of all my questions. I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to add, Deacon Scott, as we wind up the interview.
Can't think of anything. It'll probably come up in a minute.
Okay, well, I'm going to hand it over to Greg to talk a little bit about the program and how, if people are interested, how to apply. And then Deacon Scott, if you think of anything, we'll throw the ball back to you just before we leave.
Yes, excellent. Thank you. So I'm just going to be jumping around. I've kind of gone rogue with the slides, but just to reiterate some of the details of the program itself, we had mentioned that all of the courses, and there's 6 courses in this program. They're done online, and they're also done asynchronously. So just as Deacon Scott had mentioned, there's a lot of flexibility. You can log into your classes at any time that works within your schedule. And we say it's primarily done online just because while all the courses are online, there are those residencies that we had talked about, and those happen twice within the whole program. And those will happen during your 3rd and your 5th term. And then also students have the practicum hours. So this is where, once you get to your 5th term, this is where you'll be active as a spiritual director in your local area. So whether it's within your parish or your apostolate or whatever it may be, we train students. We train them on how to find directees and how to make that outreach and how to get to that next step. So we're not just training you on how to be a spiritual director and then assuming that you'll know what to do after that, but we're making sure that we're covering all bases so that you can also branch out and find those directees that need that guidance. And I'll just cover just a few other nitty-gritties very quickly about the residencies. Again, the campus where they take place happens in Sterling, Virginia. So this is Northern Virginia. I live in DC, and it takes me about 35-40 minutes to travel from home to campus. So just to give you an idea geographically. And we're about a 5-minute drive from the Dulles Airport. So for those of you who are flying in, this is not a case where you're going to be flying in and then driving an hour or so to find the campus. It's just right up the street. And students are lodged right next door to, I believe it's a Marriott hotel. In fact, it's so close that sometimes they'll walk from the hotel to campus for the 4-day residencies. So again, everything is in very close proximity. And then also just to go a little bit more into the details, students are taking 1 course at a time. So each term is 8 weeks. So you're taking 1 course per 8-week term. And usually, and this is not set in stone, but typically from what I've seen, students are committing somewhere between 6 to 9 hours per week toward their study time. It can vary based on the courses that you're taking or your familiarity with the content, but this is just more of a pattern that we've seen with our active students. And there are also breaks between the terms. So there's a lot of breathing room between all of the courses that you're taking, and the breaks happen usually during major holidays. So you won't have to concern yourself over meeting an assignment while at the same time hosting Thanksgiving or preparing yourself for Holy Week or whatever it may be. These major holidays will happen during down periods. And then for the whole program itself, it's a 2-year program. So including the breaks and the residencies and your practicum, expect for it to be a 2-year event. And just to dive into the cost as well. And I want to highlight for those of you that are active in ministry or volunteers at your parish or work within some sort of church affiliated organization, we can bring the cost down by 10%. So I do want to reiterate that first. The cost per course is $778, and then the cost per residencies is $1,000, and that $1,000 is going to cover your lodging. It'll cover most of your meals. It'll cover your materials. So the only thing that you'd be responsible for would be your travel and 3 of your dinners, but everything else will be covered under that $1,000. So that really brings me to the end of this. So what I'd like to do is open up the floor to all of you who have attended and are interested in this. I do want to also highlight very quickly that we do have 3 start dates per academic year. Right now, we are looking at the spring term. So right now we're enrolling for the spring term, which will start on January 11th. This is prime time to begin. or to apply rather, just because it feels like January is far away. It's not. It's right around the corner. So I always encourage students that if they're really interested, now is a great time to apply. It'll also give you time to get access to your orientations and learn a little bit about the APA writing style, and also which departments are there for you in case you have any needs. So with that said, I'm going to now open up the Q&A to all of you. Again, post your questions in the Q&A or the chat. So I'm going to direct certain questions to you, Maria, and to you, Deacon Scott, depending on the questions. And of course, for enrollment, I'll be here as well. So we do have one question from Colleen. She said, do you find students in your program mainly affiliate with the Catholic Christian faith tradition?
I guess I'll answer that since it's about our students. At this point in time, yes, they're either Catholics or Christians that are in the program. And that's really the tradition that the program is taught in. It doesn't mean that there couldn't be other people that are interested in this tradition that would take this program. But yeah, at this point in time, the students are either Catholics or Christians that are ministering in one of those environments, or in those environments.
Yeah, great question, Colleen. And I'll even say, just to piggyback on that, as the admissions advisor, and I speak with folks every day, I do get a lot of folks that ask if it's required that they are Catholic to be in the program, just because we do approach spiritual direction from the Catholic tradition. And just as Maria said, that's not a requirement at all. We have a lot of Christians who are not Catholic. So we have Catholic Christians and we have non-Catholic Christians in this program. And what they all have in common is their love for God and their love for serving God and serving others within this context. So great question. I will open up the floor to all of you again with any questions that you have.
Well, we're waiting for that. Deacon, is there anything that came to your mind as Greg was speaking that you'd want to comment?
Well, I just adding to the previous question, I think the material presented would be beneficial to any Christian. You know, the spiritual direction has a rich history and rich Christian traditions. And I'd say most of the program is going to tap into that and the human sciences. So I think any Christian is going to get a benefit out of the program.
Thank you.
Great. I have another question from Marta. I'll answer half of the question, and Maria, if you can answer the second half, that would be great. So Marta asked, can we get a list of the required books? And I'll just answer that first. So the answer is yes. So I'd be happy to send a list of those books out to you. So for you that are curious, any of you, what I would suggest doing is sending me an email, or you're welcome to call or text me. Either one would be fine. But go ahead and make outreach to me. My contact information is here. And for those of you interested, I'd be happy to forward you the list of the reading material that we have within this program. So the second half of the question, Maria, she asked, which edition of the Bible do you use? That's a great question. I actually don't know the answer to that one.
I think it's the NAB. I think it's the typical that's used here in the United States in the Conference of Bishops. But we also, in that sense, I don't know if there's any assignments where we upload texts of the Bible. I mean, we definitely have texts of sacred scripture throughout the course, but you're very welcome to use the Bible that you have at hand for the course. About the question of the books and everything like that. So one thing that I love about this program is that pretty much everything is online. You don't have to be searching down books and buying them and I see Deacon shaking his head. As we built this certificate, we tried to do kind of the hard work and sift through a lot of different resources and really find those that we thought would be most beneficial for you to be reading, whether from the human sciences or from the Catholic or Christian tradition. And since we are a university, we got the licenses, so we could upload those onto the platform, and you could use them and download them. So pretty much everything is there. And there's one book that we couldn't get permission to use, but the good news is that it looks like we're going to be able to actually get permission now. So we did have one book that we're like, okay, you got to start looking for this and try to buy it. But we've actually been in touch with the editorial house, and it looks like they're going to do an ebook. And so that's going to allow us to be able to put that last book that we hadn't been able to put on the platform there. So
that was one of the most pleasant surprises when I entered the program. I was thinking back to my deacon formation days, and I'm going to fill up another bookshelf of books, and to have everything online except that one book, that was a big plus. There's a few books I actually bought on my own just because they look like they'd be good to have, but to all the reading material you can access online, so that was a big plus.
Yeah, and it gives you just opportunity to have a lot of exposure to different resources. Then you, like you said, Deacon, then you can decide which ones you actually want to invest in and buy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that is a great plus that came from the work we did to design the program and develop it.
Yeah, great question, Marta. Any other questions? We're getting toward the top of the hour, but we still have some time to answer more questions for you.
I feel like we've taken a good tour of the program from a lot of different perspectives.
Yeah. Oh, it looks like we might have one more. Okay, so it looks like Marianne asked a question. So she said, access to the ebooks is per term or duration of the program?
No, all the resources that are on the platform, you can actually download into your computer. The licenses are built that way. So you can actually download them into your computer and have them. So it's during the time that you're in the course, and then afterwards. The part of our intentionality there was to help you start building your tool chest as a spiritual director. So, we really wanted to make those resources as you're going through and saying, oh my gosh, I think this is something I'd love to keep. You can do that.
Good. And then Marta also asked another question, which is how many in each cohort? I believe that's about somewhere between 25 to 30 students. I guess it could vary, but
no, it's 22.
Okay. 22. Okay.
22 is the cohort size. And then when there are some courses that have a little bit more supervision to them or follow-up. So we're trying to cap those at 18 just to be able to allow the instructor to be able to have more time with the individual students because there's more feedback needed.
Great. All right. 22 per cohort. And Marianne asked one other question. She said, first, thank you for answering her first question. Then she said, was wondering if we would have access to them as progress through the semesters. So I guess that was actually not a question, but more of just a follow up. And so yes, you will have access to them. I'll even mention very quickly that I earlier talked about the space between terms where you have these breaks, and many times students will use that as just downtime. They might plan certain events around them, vacation time or weddings or whatever it may be. But I've spoken with a few students, and many times they'll even take that time to read certain chapters or certain parts that they weren't assigned because of their curiosity of the content. So that's something that you'll have access to. So it's not like you'll only have access to what you're assigned. You'll have all the content available to you if you were curious. And then it looks like there was one other question. Any live virtual meetings besides the residencies?
We do ask every instructor to host a meeting during the duration of the 8-week course. It's not obligatory, but we ask them to host a meeting. And the nature of that meeting can really be defined by the instructor, whether it's like a question and answer or to go deeper into a certain concept. And then we also have what's called triads, and they pretty much start from the first course. And they're not, they start less frequent at the beginning, but basically it's a meeting between you and 2 other students. And at the beginning, it's really talking about something you've read together or sharing about an assignment that you have. And then later on, those triads become the actual place for you to start doing the role playing and record them and send them into the instructor to get feedback about them. So, and then in the 500 and the 600, you have some supervision sessions that is part of the practicum, so that as you're seeing people in spiritual direction, you're having those supervision sessions to reflect on your sessions and how that's going for you and what's happening in you as you give spiritual direction, kind of what you're encountering. So those are kind of the, the moments that you have to actually get online for a certain appointment.
Yeah, you're very welcome, Marianne. So again, thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. Maria, as always, I'm glad that you're able to host and just navigate through the program. And Deacon Scott, again, it's so great to have you here. And just, I always love hearing the program details, something that both Maria and I talk about all the time, but hearing it from the side of the student. And it's been a real blessing to have you here for this.
Thank you for taking time out of your schedule, Deacon, to get on this webinar.
My pleasure. Thank you all.
Yeah, of course. So I'll just say very quickly too, again, January 11th is going to be our next start date. Our communications rep has just posted a link to the application form if you were curious. There are some steps in the application, recommendations, but again, when you and I one-on-one, I'm speaking to all of you guests, when we get a chance to speak, we'll talk a little bit more about that. But we have the link for the application form, which is one of the steps presented here. I would go ahead and, if you're interested, go ahead and fill out the short form. This is not a long, extensive college application. It's a pretty short one. And we even have a code in front of you. If you look at the red box, and usually the application is $25, but we can waive that for you. If you put the code in SDCREGFREE, that way we'll have it waived for you. And once we get your application form, I'll reach out and just go through everything else to make sure this is a good fit for you and to make sure you have everything you need. So with that said, is there anything else before we end this?
No, just to say thank you, and Deacon will have you and your ministry in our prayers.
Thank you.
Yes, very good. All right, thank you all, and I appreciate you all being here, and God bless.
Thank you.